So, the Unreleased Sports Classics. I'm going to share with you some footage of how each of these vehicles drive and just give my impressions on their handling and performance. This is not full testing with lap times etc, plenty of other people out there these days do that already, and that is something I've decided I no longer want to continue with on my channel. However, I did just want to share my thoughts with you on each of them. I've literally basically spent 5 laps with each car to get a feel for them, and I'll tell you all immediately, none of them are going to be anywhere near top pace sports classics, but there are still some great cars here, so let's get into the details. So we're going to start with the Lampadati Viseris. A really interesting looking vehicle, I must say. I think the Tropos styling you can see in this car looks pretty good, but let's take a look at how it drives. So what I've done is I've put these cars into single player and I've removed the traffic etc so I can make them go around the layout of what used to be my test track, Bridging the Gap, for the testing videos that I used to do. So this car is quite difficult to describe. I personally found it a very unpleasant vehicle to lap with, to be honest. It's very twitchy, it feels very low grip, the back end is very loose and also sliding around all the time, and it does also have poor brakes, which I do suppose you kind of expect from the sports classics in the game these days. In the footage you will see a number of times that the back end is breaking away, and I found myself having to lift off where I know there is a bump coming, just so that the back of the car didn't unsettle too much, because it would very quickly spin itself all the way around if I didn't do that. And I don't really recall having to do that very often with other vehicles on this track. It was quite a while ago since I've done testing, so it might just be my old memory failing me there. But the styling and the customization it offers are quite good, and I feel like those people out there who enjoy the challenging and difficult vehicles may enjoy this, but it's definitely not for me, to be honest. I feel like its overall performance is probably not too bad if you can get the lap time out of it. Perhaps somewhere around Sterling GT or Z-type pace, I think, somewhere like that, but certainly not on Turismo Classic pace, that's for sure. So, next up we've got the Grotti GT500, a lovely little Italian sports car this, with some cheeky styling and just enough customization to make it your own. So this vehicle was a bit of a surprise to me, to be honest. It's not very quick at all, I'll get that out of the way. It feels way off the pace, but the way it handles was surprising to me. It's pretty planted, it's got better brakes than the Viseris, and it doesn't slide around anywhere near as much as I thought it was going to do, probably because it's so much slower. But the main reason I thought it would slide around so much is it's got no spoiler option on it, so I was expecting it to be quite a handful, but it's not too bad, to be honest. Like I said though, I think sadly from a racing perspective it's going to be forgotten about. I don't think it's something you're ever going to see in races, because it's really just nowhere near the pace of the top vehicles. But it is a pretty fun little car, I think, for cruising around free roam, or you know, if you just want something different for meetups etc. It's a worthy addition to the garage. Just don't go buying it for performance, because I think you'll be very disappointed if you do that. So third on the list we've got what is my favourite of probably the whole DLC, and it is of course the Savestra, a cheeky little sports classic with some great styling. So this, as I said, this is my favourite vehicle in the whole DLC, and with very good reason. It's like a little go-kart, to be honest. You can just throw this thing around and it really does love it. It soaks up the bumps nicely, it's got really good brakes for a sports classic, and it's also fairly stable. When the back end does slide around, which it does do when you throw it into corners sometimes, it's a very predictable slide, it's very easy to catch and control. I do feel it's very similar to the Retinue, to be honest, and it clearly does share some of the styling in those areas. Not only is it great fun to drive, but I also feel like it's going to be pretty quick. I feel like it's probably somewhere around the Viseris pace, maybe a little bit slower, so you know, maybe Z-type pace, something like that. But you know, unlike the Viseris, you're not going to get depressed driving this thing, because it isn't trying to kill you in every single corner. You'll find yourself smiling from ear to ear, just looking for corners to take this thing round, just so you can get that back end to give you a little wiggle. It really is a true gem in this DLC, and I'd recommend you buy one when it releases. You'll have a great lot of fun driving this thing. So finally we've got probably the most disappointing, and it is the 190Z. Great customization, but I'm not sure it has much else going for it. The way this vehicle drives, I personally found very strange. It has really decent braking performance, and it feels quite well balanced in terms of its cornering ability, but it just doesn't handle how I expected it to be honest. It almost feels like a bit artificial, does that make sense? Like it's not connected to the road sometimes. It slides around a little bit, but no more than say the GT500, and I think like its overall performance is probably going to be somewhere between the Viseris and the GT500, somewhere around there. So I mean, there's obviously a big gap between those two vehicles, and it's going to fit somewhere in there, kind of in no man's land. I feel like we'll probably still see quite a lot of them in game, because the customization that you can see on the vehicle from my customization video, it does have a lot of options available to it, so people can probably make some good vehicles from that. But in terms of racing, again, I like the GT500. It's not something that you're ever going to see in races, I don't think, apart from people that, you know, just choose cars to have fun. It's certainly not anywhere near top pace, which is a shame. I feel like we've kind of got to the stage now where there's almost a divide in the sports classics class between there's like a tier 1 and a tier 2 kind of styling within the sports classic. It's quite a strange class, to be honest. I wish Rockstar would split it in two, but of course they're never going to do that. So those were the new unreleased sports classics, and I really do hope you guys found that footage and opinion shared really useful. The muscle cars that we've got, so the Hustler and the Hermes, I've got a video available for them too, and I'll be releasing that tomorrow, because obviously the Hermes becomes available on Christmas Day for free, and then the Hustler, I don't know when that's coming out, but I figured it made sense to release it with the Hermes, so that video will be out tomorrow. And then the other classes will be out at some point in the near future. So thank you very much, guys. I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch this. CoyneDawg out.